All right. Well, let's open with prayer, and then we'll see how far we can get into the Gospel of Mark. This is week 6. We are not yet through chapter 1, and there are 16 chapters. Yeah, you know, I when I was planning this or thinking through it, I thought, okay, well, we're in, the lectionary goes A, B, C, so 3 years. A is Matthew, B is Mark, C is Luke, and John is sprinkled in between. So I thought, okay, like we're in C, we've got the rest of this year, we've got all of A until we get back to Mark. We may hit year B and still be in Mark. It's possible, yeah.
A little marketing tip. It would have been better if you said, it's only been 6 weeks and we're already...
Fair enough. Well, let me go ahead and open up some prayer, and we'll get underway. Heavenly Father, once again, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather as a community, to open your word, to think, discuss, to reflect together on who your Son is, what Mark is trying to tell us about who your Son is. So ultimately, Lord, that we can be better disciples, that we can follow him in the life that he has called us to live. We ask you that we would have eyes that see, ears that hear, and hearts that understand. We ask it with your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Does everybody know why I pray that? Eyes that see, ears that hear, hearts that understand? Yeah? Like it's not just sort of language about understanding. It's in Isaiah 6, when Isaiah is commissioned, he's told, go and make these people have eyes that don't see, ears that don't hear, hearts that understand. He's drawing on psalmic language, which says essentially that you become what you worship, which, people use to talk about idolatry, really, right? The idea is that if idols have eyes but can't see, ears that don't hear, hearts that don't understand, and so people who worship idols become like them, their ability to perceive what God is doing in this world falters. I remember distinctly a guy from All Souls named Rob tweeted out, "You are what you worship," and Alan Jacobs, the smartest and cleverest guy I've ever known in my whole life, immediately replied, "I'm God." So you got to be careful how you phrase these things exactly. But, and then when Jesus is asked why he speaks to the people in parables, we'll see this. I think this is it, Mark. But when Jesus asks why he speaks to the people in parables, his answer is, because truly did Isaiah say of this generation, having eyes you don't see, ears that don't hear. So that prayer is for God to turn us away from idolatry, to make our ability to perceive what he is trying to say, to us and to the world clearer, to basically give us, the language of sensory organ malfunction. So what would the corollary be? Functioning sensory organs or something like that. But that we would perceive rightly what God is trying to tell us in this world. So we are in this book and about his Son. So we got through, I believe we got through verse 28 last time, which is why I started where I started here. When I was putting this together, I went back to verse 27 because I think the context is a little important here. Again, this just sort of summarizes what's been said before. And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." The point of this section seems to be Mark's initial kind of declaration about the authority of Jesus, not only his teaching authority, but his authority over the world, his authority over demonic beings. We'll see his authority over wind and waves, right? That his voice speaks with the authority of God. And I think there are places in the Gospels where well, let me put it this way. If someone wanted to argue that the "what is this" is Mark's own rhetorical addition to the story to force the reader to ask that question, I wouldn't argue terribly with them. That question is meant to draw out of us, again, there is this hiddenness, there is this veiledness, there's the opening declaration that he's the Son of God, but then nobody's calling him that, and nobody's knowing who he is. He just appears to be a rabbi, and they're like, oh, look at this teaching, but they're not seeing the full weight of it. But then here they ask among themselves, what is this, right? And maybe even they should have been asking themselves, who is this, right? So maybe even the question itself is meant to draw out further questions in us. Exegesis through imagination is not always the best method, but I do think there's a veiledness to Mark's gospel, and if you've I'm sure you all went out and bought a copy of First Enoch and started reading apocalyptic literature. You did? Yes, I did. That's awesome. Did you read the Animal Apocalypse? Yeah, I'm in the beginning. Okay, you got a ways to go. You're in the Book of the Watchers, but I didn't know if I should read it from beginning to end. You can if you look in it's 5 books, at least 5 smashed into one. So if you look at the table of contents, I would assume the table of contents will make clear, like it probably will say book 1, book 2, and I think Animal Apocalypse starts in 84 or something, chapter 84. But yeah, you can read it straight through, but you can also read the individual books, and it's great. But my point was, if you're familiar with apocalyptic literature, that kind of imaginative exegesis is almost necessary, because apocalyptic literature doesn't really fill in the gaps. It asks the reader to fill in the gaps, to figure out what the vision is symbolizing, pointing at. It usually draws on biblical imagery without, the book of Revelation has more allusions to the Old Testament than arguably the rest of the New Testament combined. And I think, I should know this, but I think, I'm 99% confident, at no point does it ever say, as it was written, or this was to fulfill. Right? It's just allusions that ask the reader to pick them up and figure out what it means. So, I don't recognize very many of the names. Did you? What do you mean? No. This is a whole. You're in the early parts. You're in the whole Watchers tradition. This is a whole sort of arguably secondary kind of Genesis tradition that was circulating at the time, and in some people's minds, competing with or equal to the Genesis we know of. So, no, you're not going to recognize all the names for sure. So what is this? Maybe they should have asked, who is this? A new teaching with authority. The whole point is Jesus' ability to speak. He speaks in the synagogue, and people are amazed that he doesn't say, as the rabbis so-and-so said. He just speaks. We'll see him not in this gospel, but in Matthew. He says, you have heard it said, but I say unto you, right? He's speaking as one who has authority intrinsic to himself. And that authority isn't just isn't just interpretive authority. It's authority over spiritual powers. It's authority over creation, as we'll see at one point, but not here. But it's a new teaching with authority. And then verse 28, and at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. Jesus is becoming famous. He's becoming, in modern parlance, a social media star, or, he's becoming famous enough that people are going to start tweeting about him and writing posts about him and whatever. And as we'll see, rather than embracing it, what Jesus does is he retreats, but not necessarily immediately. So then let's go to verse 29, and I'll read 29 through 34, and then we'll talk about it. And immediately, Mark's favorite word, he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her. And she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to them all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. So what stands out to you here?
Well, something that struck me was that Simon's mother-in-law was healed immediately. That he didn't say, "I'm going to heal you." She didn't ask for healing. Just the fact that his presence was there and maybe his touch was there, it was just the healing of his mother-in-law. There was no clue that it was going to happen in the text anyway. And immediately it happened. Nobody asked him to heal it in the text. So I thought that was
Well, they told him about her, right?
Yeah, and he came and he took her by the hand
Yeah,
and lifted her up, and the fever left her.
yeah.
He just helped her up, so I thought it was...
Yeah, it's I think if I can put words in your mouth, I think you're getting at that it's sort of remarkably not dramatic.
Right.
Like there's just no build up to it. There's no it's almost casual in the way that she's healed. They want her to her house. She's sick. He takes her by the hand. She's healed. Yeah, it's remarkably not dramatic. What do you make from that?
There's not very many details in the story.
Yeah, there's not very many details in that story. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just the casual, by the way, reference to the demons as if this is an ordinary thing. It reminded me of that scene in the first Men in Black movie where they've stopped this alien in a car and this alien with tentacles gives birth in the back seat and spews stuff all over Will Smith, and they get back to the car and Tommy Lee Jones says, "Did you notice anything unusual about that?" It's like just this matter of fact that there are all these demons there, and he cast them out, and they knew him. It's like I would think that would kind of be a headline, but it's just worked in there.
Yeah. We'll get back to that a little bit, and we've talked about sort of demons a bit, but yeah, the casual reference to demons and the contrast between those who don't seem to know who he is and the demons who do is interesting, right? Even they recognize who he is, but Israel, to go back to the language I was talking about a moment ago, Israel is blind. Israel isn't seeing it.
Maybe it's especially that demons recognize them. They are spiritual beings, and so can see things that people bound up in the material world can't or don't.
Yeah.
So looking for.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, true, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing about the woman being healed, it's interesting, she just gets to work. I mean, she's purely healed. She's not saying, "Oh, I've been sick and now I get to, rest a bit before I get going." She just gets going.
Yeah, I actually think I think that's a big part of this is her immediate turn to serve. Right? I mean, if the story is, well, all people are sick, blind, deaf to spiritual realities, and the healer of Israel is now here, and now he's healed you, what do you do next? She's, among others in the gospel, she's a model, and that you serve others. That's what God has called you to do. Christ heals you and calls you to serve others. I mean, I say that like in full recognition that at the tail end of the way section, Jesus is going to say things like, the one who would be master, the one who would be first must be servant of all, and the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many, right? I mean, this is not just, like, I'm not just extrapolating from one sentence, serve. I'm keeping in mind that Mark's going to have this whole theme later on about to be Christ's disciple is to serve others, to give your life for others, that sort of thing. So
there's also an interesting difference, say, with the Mary and Martha story, because, at some point someone's going around serving and worrying about serving and trying to get things done.
It's true.
As and then
Yep.
There are times to sit back and be still.
Yep, that's a good point too. What do you make of this? Yeah, go ahead. Well, get a microphone over there, but yeah.
Is there a reason why Mark doesn't comment at all? Jesus has got Andrew and Simon with him, James and John, and the mother-in-law gets healed, and there's apparently no reaction from them.
Oh,
Maybe I'm picky here, but it just struck me as interesting. I don't know.
yeah, I never thought of it. I should have looked this up, but I didn't, and so I'm going off of general memory here. But I think Mark is the only gospel to record this story. Maybe not, but either way, in terms of this being the first gospel to be written, I do get your point that there is no, reaction by the disciples, particularly by Simon, whose mother-in-law it is. Maybe he didn't like his mother-in-law so much. Maybe he just grew, oh, come on, Jesus, like her. But if the early church claimed that John Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark based off Peter's remembrances, you can understand why the story of... So my point is, maybe even just including this story is kind of Peter's reaction. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is a memorable thing for him in which Jesus entered his house and healed his mother-in-law. So if Peter is somehow the narrator of this text, even if his own reaction isn't recorded here, the fact that it's included in Mark's gospel is a sign of the impact it had on Peter. But this is one of those reasons why people think that there is truth to the early church tradition that Mark is sort of writing down Peter's remembrances, because, we can extrapolate things from this, but there isn't a whole, there isn't, as far as I'm aware, there isn't some huge biblical theology. There isn't like the schizomai thing with Jesus' baptism. This is just kind of a story of a very simple healing without much drama or fanfare, as Father Lewis was pointing out. But I think this is evidence, or at least would be evidence towards the idea that this is Peter's remembrance, and he distinctly recalls Jesus walking into his house and healing his mother-in-law. Yeah, did I see another? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep, that's helpful. Yeah. Mary Lou, did you have?
Just that there's no mention of any of these people who are healed or, having demons removed, of faith. In many of the other Gospels, when healings occur,
Yeah.
it's your faith has saved you or your faith has made you well. There's just no mention of faith at all.
Yeah. So what do you make of that?
That the faith healers of today who say you don't have enough faith.
Oh.
I think that back then, it was, and even today, I think in a lot of areas where Christ is really not known, that healings are used to draw people into wanting to know who this Jesus is,
Yeah.
rather than saying that, oh, I've got faith enough, so I deserve this, or I should have this should be mine, because
Yeah.
I do believe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's sort of tricky to find the right words for. So I'm glad you answered it, not me. But we had a discussion at the grief support group, and I won't rehash that discussion. But I said, someone asked me for kind of my theological opinion, and I said a bunch of stuff. But the thing that sort of stood out to me was I said I want to put this in the category of common grace and not special grace, right? And I think there's something dangerous about assuming that things like healings are just for Christians, or just for those who have faith, or just for those who believe or not. I think, to your point, there's something particularly dangerous about any narrative that says to someone who is sick, well, if you only believed more, or whose loved one is sick, and you say, well, if you only believed more, the rain falls on everyone, that God gives good to those whom he so pleases, and I don't think, I think there are certainly moments where Jesus reacts to a person's faith. I mean, obviously, moments where Jesus reacts to someone's faith and acts, but I also think this, as you're pointing out, this kind of just general healing is a clear indication of God's general desire to heal and restore everyone. And ideally, I think also, as you were kind of pointing out, that healing, whether we term it miraculous or not, I'm always a bit miffed by that distinction, because God works in all kinds of dramatic ways and subtle ways, and anybody who can figure out, what's God and what's science is smarter than me. But yeah, God's intention is to heal and restore all people, and ideally that draws people into relationship with him, and that draws people into faith. But it doesn't always.
Well, I do believe that God always heals.
Yeah.
It may be this side of heaven,
Oh, right.
or
Yeah.
it may not be until we meet him in glory.
Yeah.
But God always heals, and that is his intent, that, excuse me, we be healed and whole, but it might not be the way we desire and see in our present world.
Yeah. The resurrection is the answer to every unanswered prayer for healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Father, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's just the whole thing about trying to put formulas into God's response to our lives. Like, for example, the amount of faith, and I do this. It runs the danger of trying to develop some form of manipulation of God,
Yeah.
which is almost like magic.
Yeah.
So that's a danger there. And so just God is just so loving, and his mercy, like I said, endures forever, and it's Catholic for everybody. We had Carol had cancer for 5 months that we knew of, and we got the pathology report that it's gone now, because of the surgery, got it all, which is
Yeah.
and then my neighbor of mine, who's a very strong Christian, has been battling his cancer for 4 years, and he's a very strong Christian. And we have a prayer group for him, and so it's just and God is healing both Carol and him, and just in a different way, and it's just and he's very accepting of that, and he was very joyous to hear about Carol's result. So
It's very humble of him.
yeah, and it's just yeah, God just does God things, which is
Yeah.
for us. To
It's
try to-
almost like the Spirit blows where it wishes. You know, I mean, it's we just, this is for a whole host of reasons, and one of which you just described, which is why I'm so averse to the idea of theological systems. Just any attempt to say like this is always that, and I just think there's so much, even in the Bible itself, that is ambiguous to me about how healing relates to faith and how healing relates to the general population, and why one person is this healed and one is not, why one is converts and one. I mean, there's just so much of this mystery to me to say, well, here's the theological system that makes sense of it all. I don't know how you're supposed to do that. So yeah, Steve.
If the Holy Spirit's purpose in inspiring the Bible had been to communicate such a system, there'd be a lot more efficient way to do it. With an
Yeah.
outline and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you, I mean, not to belabor the point, but this is that my repeated maxim of you don't honor something by pretending that it's something that it's not. I mean, there's an entire for literally 2 centuries since the quote unquote not today's fundamentalists, but the fundamentalists of like the 18th century. This shift towards turning the Bible into a systematic, sort of a textbook, rather than reading it for what it is, and it has not served, particularly the American church, well at all. Yeah. Anyone want to add anything else to this? I think it's again you end up at verse 28, where at once his fame spread everywhere throughout the surrounding region of Judea, and then here in verse 33, the whole city is gathering at the door. I mean, Mark is building up the fame of Jesus. And then that last verse, and he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. Yeah, Mary Lou.
And, well, even here, where it says all who were sick were brought to him,
Yeah.
but only many were the ones who were healed. So even
Oh, that's interesting.
back then, we see that for some there was a healing. I don't know what it would say in the original language, but
I without having, I don't have it memorized obviously, but I would suspect based on ESV translation principles, you are exactly right that there is that distinction. That's interesting. I never even thought about that. That all, do you get what she's saying in verse 32? It says all who were sick were brought to him, but then at verse 34, but he healed many. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It's kind of like in the Eucharistic prayer.
Ooh.
In the Eucharistic prayer, where we say that this is the blood which is given up for sin, for the forgiveness of sins for many.
Yeah.
So it's a similar
Yeah,
kind of,
this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for you and for many.
and for many.
Yeah, yeah. I love that sentence because it's just a perfect reminder that this isn't my special meal, right? Like, it wasn't just done for me. This was done for many. Yeah. All right, any more questions? Okay, Deacon Karen, let's go. Yeah?
I think it's, I have
She's got a
this,
mic on. Oh, look
I
at
have
this.
a mic on. I think it's interesting that one of the details Mark does give is he would not permit the demons to speak
Yeah?
because they knew him.
Yeah?
So I guess that's really kind of scary because that implies the demons always speak a lot. And, I just found that very interesting.
That was question 11 on the handout. Why do you think Jesus silences the demons?
I think because he wants us to come to him in love, as opposed to for celebrity status or for just. It's not. You need to know. You need to have a relationship with God, and not just know about him. And the demons obviously don't have the right relationship with God because they rebelled, right? So, but they know of him,
Yeah?
and they could see him. So, knowing about Christ is not enough. You have to know Christ, and I think.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but what is why? I mean, I'm just imagining, like, I don't know how to put this, but like, imagine if someone who was demon possessed walked in here, like, I recognized it and said, in the name of Christ, I cast you out. The demon came out, was shrieking, and started like screaming about, I mean, forgive me, this sounds, Father Michael was so blessed or whatever, right? Like, started talking about who I was. I could see people who were experiencing this going like, why wouldn't that be a positive thing? I mean, obviously it's a demon, right? But I mean, if demons are real and it manifests and it's screaming about how someone is the Holy One of God or blessed by God or whatever, why would you want to stop that testimony?
Because he's going to say, I am. Like, I am Christ. Like, I am. Like, they're going to recognize exactly who he is.
Who's going to recognize?
The demons, and they're going to say exactly that.
But why is that a problem? That's the question. Yeah.
It's because it's early in his ministry, and if
Yeah.
all of this comes out at this time, I mean, in the other Gospels, he said, it's not yet my time. I can't be made known.
Yeah.
He doesn't want Rome to be, interfering with him taking the word to the people.
You are correct, and I do think that's a big part of it. I think in Mark's gospel, okay, we'll give it one more try.
It seems to me, if I can find the right words to say what I'm trying to get to here is, it's like if somebody supports a political candidate, and you look at this person who's supporting him and saying, well, I don't know if that guy likes it, and I'm not so sure I want to.
Yeah, so you're saying if a demon is sort of giving Jesus a thumbs up, that
Yeah.
might actually not be the kind of campaign endorsement you want.
Right.
Yeah. I hear you. If it was just the demons, I think you'd be right, but there's a concerted effort throughout the whole gospel for Jesus to say, don't tell anyone, right? This is, I think, the point. And I think this is really crucial for us to understand as disciples of Jesus Christ. In fact, I think you could almost argue this is one of the major points of Mark's gospel. Jesus appears to not want to be known as the Messiah apart from the cross. Right? He wants, if you're going to believe in him because he gave up his life as a ransom for many, not because he healed people, not because he was up, right? Like he's up on the mountain of transfiguration, and he's transfigured and he's glowing, and Moses and Elijah are there, and he says to them, don't tell anyone, just like he silences the demons here. Because Jesus doesn't want to be known for his healing power, for his miracle work, right? And this is what you see in Mark 9, 10, and 8, 9, and 10 in the way section, is Jesus redefining what it means to be the Messiah, and Jesus redefining what it means to be his disciples. I mean, the whole plan, but the whole conversation about the Gentiles lord it over those whom they rule, but it won't be so like you. Whoever would be greatest must be servant of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, is in answer to the two brothers saying, we want power. We want to sit at your right hand and at your left. We want authority. We want power. We want what you have shown you have. And Jesus is saying, that's the wrong reason to follow me. The real reason to know who I am, the real reason to follow me is the cross. And if you apart from that, he's just a wandering miracle worker. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but without the cross, this is the Gnostic Jesus that the heretics of the early church, the heretics in the first few centuries of the church invent, which is a Jesus apart from the cross who is just a basically wandering miracle worker dispensing words of wisdom and not giving his life as a ransom for many. You got a smirking look on your face. Like,
we had talked about it in the small group earlier.
there is
a, God, I forget again who was the original recording of it, but there's a song recorded by Emmylou Harris called Jerusalem Tomorrow, which is basically about an itinerant miracle worker.
Oh, yeah.
Who, basically, it's a scam.
Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
convinces everybody he's the thing, and then he runs across Jesus, and you're left to, oh, what's next? Because they're headed to, the last line is, we're headed to Jerusalem tomorrow. So that kind of makes sense that there would be these itinerant preachers. That's not who Jesus really is expecting.
And he's not, I mean, in some ways, he's not that thing, but he's not merely that thing.
That's not the point.
Right. And that's what Mark wants us to understand. I think that's why the demons are constantly being silent, because if you follow him because of his power, because, he feeds many. You're an empire in the first century and you want to wage war. Your biggest problem is food. And this dude shows up and takes some bread and loaves and feeds 5,000 men with them, who, by the way, are all arranged like the sort of description matches how you would arrange an army. And they sought to make him king by force. And Jesus withdraws. Right? It's you can't not, without, all these other things are true, but without the cross, they're all skewed. They're all, on their own, they're all wrong reasons to follow Jesus. So he is going to show up and heal, because that's what Yahweh is supposed to do, and because he cares for people, and he loves people, and he wants to care for them. But the reason to follow him is the cross, because he gave his life as a ransom for many. All right, let's see if we can get through. We have like 15 minutes, but I don't think there's necessarily a ton here. That's super like controversial or whatever. But verse 35, let me read 35 through 39. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, "Everyone is looking for you." And he said to them, sorry, I just lost my place. And he said to them, "Let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out." And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. Who wants to comment on those, 5 verses? Yeah. Yeah.
I think when Jesus was praying, he got the word from God to move along, and he's got so much more to do. No?
No. I think that's right. I mean, we're not told what he learned, but I fully suspect or think it's fully right to say that Jesus retreats to pray because it is necessary for him and for all of us. That really is the point I want to get to take time out to pray and recharge and to hear from God. And if the next thing he says is, "I'm supposed to go," then that's presumably exactly what he heard back from God while he was praying. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What else stands out here?
There's no mention of healing.
Yeah, that is interesting, right? It's just preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. Now, the very next story is, "And a leper came to him." So there are certainly healings, but I
Casting out demons is a healing.
it is a healing. Yeah, that's true. I do think.
They were coupled together in the previous.
Right. Yeah, and so, again, it's really difficult to make exegetical points from what's not in the text, but I am inclined to think that this is again a subtle reference to the idea that he's waging war against, because what you would have expected, if you're thinking Maccabean terms, what you would have expected is "and casting out the Romans," or "kicking out the Romans." Like, that language is what you would expect to be applied to the political enemies, the foreign armies of the people of God. But I do think also that demons and healing are probably somewhat hand in hand here. But again, exegeting by what's not in there is not ideal, but I think this, by kind of leaving this phrase as it is a kind of subtle reference to not waging war against all the different outposts of Roman rule throughout the land, but waging war against the demons spread throughout the land. Yeah, Winnie?
Okay, I answered the question about the difference between popularity and faithfulness. And I said popularity can be fickle, because they would want Jesus probably to do more miracles and, as Asher said earlier, have power to do that, such and such. But Jesus' mission was to preach the word of God, and that is faithfulness, and it could not be interfered with. And his mission leads to the cross, which is so necessary, as you were saying earlier, because without the cross, what happens?
Yeah. It is very clear, I think, throughout the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is turning away from popularity. He's turning away from fame. He didn't, this is, again, not to keep quoting the same verse, but the phrase, I'm preempting myself, but the chance that anybody will remember this 4 years from now when we get to Mark 9, maybe is low. But when Jesus says the Son of Man came not to be served, it's a reference to Daniel 7:14, 13 and 14, which is the Son of Man came on the clouds to the Ancient of Days, and it says, verse 14, "And to him was given dominion, the glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him." Right? If you're just taking that verse at face value, you would expect him to embrace the fame and embrace the people's praise and embrace, them giving him glory. But he is turning aside from it. As we've said in previous lessons, because he reads Daniel 7 through the lens of Isaiah 53. He's not just the coming Son of Man, but he is the suffering servant, and you have to hold both together to understand who he is. But Jesus didn't come to be famous. He didn't come to receive men's praise for healing or casting out demons. He came to preach the good news, which we've said. If you ask, what did Jesus preach, and you think he was walking around Galilee going, well, in 3 days, I'm going to go, in a little while, I'm going to go to Jerusalem, and I'm going to die, and 3 days later I'll rise from the dead, and you got to have, that's not the gospel he preached. That is the gospel he will preach later on in the gospel, at least to his disciples privately, but he's announcing to all who will listen that the return of Yahweh to Zion is underway, that the time is now, the kingdom is at hand. And with that announcement comes the quote-unquote holy war, not against physical enemies, not against foreign armies, but against the spiritual forces that continue to enslave not just foreign armies, but the people, not just foreign countries, I should say, but the people of Israel themselves. And that's maybe the shocking thing here. In terms of general biblical, like, demonology, there's the idea that up in the heavens there are spiritual forces, the different demons who rule over different lands, and they're waging war against the angel who protects the people of God. Like, this is all kind of biblical, but we're seeing the demons now dwelling amongst the people of God, inhabiting them. And so Jesus is on his holy war to cast out the demons. What else stands out here? We got a few more minutes. One of the questions, question 3, was why does Mark highlight that Jesus gets up early and goes to a lonely place to pray? How does this show where his mission comes from? Would anyone, like Mary Lou, like to talk about the importance of prayer in your teaching ministry and in re-energizing for the mission God has given you? I'm just kidding. She doesn't. I'm not trying to put her on the spot. But again, Mark wants us to learn discipleship by imitating Jesus, which means turning away from fame, which means turning away from power, which means turning away from man's praise. And if of all people who have ever lived, Jesus needed to get away, retreat, spend time in the morning in prayer. The Jews have a form of argument called kal v'homer, which is light to heavy, meaning like if this, then how much more this? If Jesus needed to get away and pray, then how much how much more you, who aren't the ontological Son of God, but adopted sons and daughters of God, need to also get away and pray, right? This is, if we're not reading Mark's gospel to learn what it means to be his disciple, we're not reading it well, right? And I don't just mean, like, what does he say about discipleship? I mean, he's the model. I also find it as someone who, and please don't hear what I'm not saying, I'm not disparaging any part of this, but someone who feels constantly pulled between family, St. Dunstan's, and diocesan responsibilities, I resonate. I resonate with the sentence. Let me go back here. Everyone is looking for you, right? I mean, it's this. Everyone is has a demand they want to make on your time, and I think it's telling. I mean, Jesus is not unaware of this, right? It's incredibly telling that Jesus knows this and still understands the importance of getting away and spending time in prayer. It says rising very early in the morning while it was still dark. That sounds terrible to me. But, finding time in your day, whenever that is, to pray and to recharge and to listen to what God is telling you to do, for your day, for your ministry, for whatever it is that He needs to speak to you. Without that, we're just floundering. Without that, we're just, I guess, listening to the echo of the voice in our own heads and doing what we want and wondering why we stumble along the way consistently. And, I love everyone is looking for you. And Jesus doesn't say, as I would probably say, like, okay, what do you need me to do? He leaves. I mean, he's like, I have a mission, I have a purpose, this is what I'm called to do. And that's super helpful for all of us to remember as well, that when we have a vocation, when we have a calling, there's lots of things in our lives, sometimes good, sometimes bad, that make demands on us and our time. And if we know what we're called to do by God, if we have an understanding of our personal vocation in this world that He has given us, then those things, they don't fall away, certainly, especially not when they're family, but we're too easily inclined to let demands on our life pull us away from the vocation that we know God has placed on our lives. Yeah.
So, different tact a little bit here. There's no discussion here in Mark, and it may be in the other Gospels, about clean and unclean. And we know that in the Old Testament, Moses says that everyone in the world is either clean or unclean. And if you touch somebody, this is Old Testament, that is unclean, you become unclean, I believe.
Brother, you're in the next paragraph.
Oh, am I? Oh, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
I didn't
we'll
go
call it
that
a preview of coming attractions.
Yeah. But I find this whole thing about Jesus fulfilling the law, and while he's touching unclean people to heal them.
Yeah.
There's no okay, I guess there is mention of it.
Yeah,
So
well,
we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about this all. I mean, the very next thing is a leper came to him, imploring him and kneeling to him, and said, "If you can make me, if you will, you can make me clean." And he touches him. So it's exactly what we're talking about, and we will get to this next week. We got like 2 minutes. Any last comments on this verse? If not, I'll close us in prayer, or these verses. We're almost out of chapter 1. All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you again for gathering us here. Thank you for the Gospel of Mark. Thank you for your Son who turned away from fame, who turned away from those who only saw his power. Lord, help us to follow him, not for power, not for fame, not for prestige, privilege, any of those things, but help us to follow him because he gave his life as a ransom for many. Help us to take up our cross and follow him wherever he leads. We ask this in his name. Amen. Oh no. Well, you can watch it online.